After following his Maid, a billionaire CEO uncovered surprising truths that transformed his life. Mark Thompson stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, the gleaming skyline of Manhattan sprawling before him. The sun cast a golden hue over stretched shadows, but all he felt was an oppressive weight pressing down on his chest. A lifetime of hard-won success lay beneath his fingertips, yet he felt irresistibly empty, as though his fortune were nothing but glittering glass, impressive to behold, but utterly hollow. He turned back to his desk, desperate to drown out that disquieting voice echoing in his mind. With his eyes scanning through contracts riddled with clauses and signatures, he barely registered Maria, his maid, speaking softly in Spanish on the phone. Curiosity tugged at him, the urgency in her voice a rawness that sharply contrasted with the sterile environment he commanded, filled him with an unfamiliar emotion. Mark found himself inching closer, his heart thudding with a peculiar anticipation and an unsettling sense of voyeurism. What could possibly stir her heart so fiercely? Against all logic, he decided to follow her. The elevator ride down felt like a plunge into uncharted territory. As the doors opened, he stepped into the reality of the city he had long overtaken, a world where vibrancy collided with distress, where people hustled with determination amid their daily struggles. Mark felt the sharp contrast like a slap in the face. He trailed Maria through winding streets until they reached a modest apartment, where the sound of laughter and children's voices filled the air. There, he watched her advocate passionately for her family, her small frame standing tall against the burdens weighing on them. Tentatively, he began peeling back the layers of Maria's life. Each revelation struck him harder than the last: her struggles, her dreams, and above all, her unyielding commitment to family. Mark's mind raced as flashes of his own past flickered before him, a childhood filled with laughter, values sewn deep into his being, values he had allowed to wither in the relentless pursuit of wealth. The further he went, the more haunted he became by the echoes of his own past, long-forgotten roots of integrity and care suddenly gnawing at the polished walls of his empire. The shadows of his board members loomed large, their whispers of greed pulsing beneath the surface like a dormant volcano ready to erupt. As tension swelled around him, Mark felt a desperate urgency mount. He was caught between the gilded cage of corporate ambition he'd built and the pulsing heart of humanity he had buried deep. The thought of risking everything for something genuine sparked fear unlike any he had known, fear of missing out on the power that came with status, fear that perhaps facing the truth would lead to his ruination as the wolves of unrelenting ambition circled, ready to pounce on any weakness. Before he could take a breath, the door swung open, revealing a tattered envelope bearing his late father's handwriting. As he opened it, a chilling revelation hit him: a trove of family values demanding recognition, demanding change at the very core of who he was. Would he solicit help from those who had lifted him to the heights of success, or embrace a new path that led to vulnerability and honor? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mark's breathing quickened, his fingers gripping the paper like it was the last lifeline he had. A maelstrom of doubts whirled within him. What did it mean to lead? What if embracing his father's legacy cost him everything? As the deadline for the board meeting loomed like a storm cloud, he felt the suffocating weight of decision pressing down upon him. The clock ticked, every second amplifying his inner turmoil. Would he have the courage to rewrite the script, or would he surrender to the overpowering allure of the world he had so meticulously constructed? The very threads of his existence unraveled as he stood at the precipice, a twist of fate lingering just beyond his reach, forcing him to confront the truth of who he could become. The chaos of thoughts raging in Mark's mind rendered him motionless, caught in a web of indecision. He cursed himself for waiting this long, days spent anchored to his towering office, reviewing spreadsheets and dealing with boardroom disputes, oblivious to the personal growth slipping through his fingers like sand. Suddenly, Maria's voice, so full of passion and resolve, called to him, pulling him back from the abyss of his own making. Drawing a breath thick with determination, he shook off his paralysis and stepped away from the desk. The commitments to his board and company felt like shackles, each one representing a choice he had made that echoed the life he was living instead of the one he envisioned. He realized he didn't want to remain imprisoned by double standards, chasing fleeting accolades while the essence of who he was dwindled into mere memory. With the envelope still clutched in his hand, Mark exited his penthouse to confront the two opposing worlds within him. He boarded his sleek silver car, the driver obeying his request to take him back to Maria's humble apartment. The air crackled with urgency. Every block passed seemed to intensify the anticipation of his next steps. Was he seeking redemption or merely acknowledgement of his privileged life? Arriving at the street that had become a focal point of introspection, he hesitated, his resolve shaken by doubt. The laughter of children drifted out from the open windows, mingling with the distant sounds of the city. It was a chorus of life unfurling beyond the confines of wealth and authenticity he desperately craved but had avoided for so long. Stepping out of the car felt like shedding an old skin. He couldn't help but rediscover the pulse of his own heart. As he approached the door, Maria emerged, her surprise evident as her eyes widened at the sight of her employer standing before her. "Mr. Thompson?" "Maria," he started, his voice trembling slightly with the weight of unspoken truths. "I've been watching you. Watching your life." A flicker of vulnerability crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with curiosity. "What do you want?" Her voice held no condemnation, just a potent mixture of caution and genuine interest. Taking a step forward, Mark felt the residue of his unearned privilege start to slip away. "I want to understand. I want to learn. Can you show me?" Her brow furrowed in confusion, as if she were trying to decipher a foreign language. It was the moment he dreaded and desired in equal measure, a blend of hope and fear. "You mean to help me?" she asked incredulously. "Why would you do that?" "Because," he replied, "I'm beginning to realize that I've lost my way." The sincerity in his voice momentarily bridged the social chasm between them. Maria considered him, searching for traces of deception, but finding only a raw openness. "All right," she said slowly, "but it won't be easy. Are you ready for that?" In that instant, Mark sensed the weight of transformation settle over him like a familiar but long-forgotten cloak. It was time to confront the larger questions that now loomed over his life, the balance of ambition and humanity, sacrifice and gain. He nodded solemnly, knowing this choice would lead him down a path riddled with challenges. Yet, for the first time in years, uncertainty felt invigorating. As they stepped inside her apartment, the warmth enveloped him, filled with the laughter and energy of family. Every voice, every smile, was a reminder of what he'd been missing all along. The eclectic decorations caught his attention, a vibrant canvas depicting a familial scene reminding him of colors he had muted in his pursuit of wealth. Maria turned to him, her expression earnest. "Are you prepared for this journey? This change?" Mark inhaled deeply, his resolve hardening. "Yes, it's time for me to discover who I can truly be." With that declaration, the door to his self-discovery swung wide open, and a new chapter began, one that would demand everything from him. Just as he took his first step into a world filled with genuine connection and humility, a ripple of doubt punctured the air. Would those in his corporate life allow this transformation? Would the ruthless ambition he had embraced resist the changes he sought to make? The path ahead was unclear, but as he glanced at Maria, he felt an exhilarating sense of purpose, one that urged him to venture forward. The time had come to face his past and rewrite his future. As Mark stepped into Maria's modest apartment, a world filled with laughter surrounded him, vibrant and alive in stark contrast to the sterile silence of his high-rise office. The scent of spices wafted from the kitchen, where Maria's family was preparing dinner, infusing the space with warmth and comfort. Each joyful shout and giggle reverberated through him, awakening long-dormant emotions. For a moment, he stood there, absorbing the raw essence of life unfolding before him, a life he had long overlooked in his ascent to corporate power. "Welcome," Maria said, her voice cutting through his reverie. "This way." She led him towards the living room, where children dove onto plush cushions, their antics drawing soft chuckles from the adults around them. Mark followed, every footstep echoing the consciousness of his unfamiliarity. As he observed the interactions, he began to question his own relationships, layered with pretense and formality, devoid of this genuine connection. Maria noticed his silence and paused, her eyes searching his. "What are you thinking?" "I'm trying to fathom how I've missed this," he admitted, the words feeling heavy on his tongue. "There's something pure about all of this, something real." Maria smiled, but her expression shifted, hinting at deeper skepticism. "It's not easy to build connections, Mark. You can't just step in and expect it all to change quickly." "That's what I'm afraid of," he confessed, the layers of his former life weighing down on him. What was left of his confidence now flickered tenuously. Yet he knew he had embarked on this journey to emerge as a more authentic version of himself, even if it meant confronting discomfort. Their conversation unfolded over the next hour, their differences laid bare, while they shared food and laughter, veiling the stark divides of their backgrounds. Each anecdote that Maria recounted painted vivid images in his mind, contrasting with the sterile successes he had once cherished. Her tales brimmed with resilience, laughter, and unvarnished honesty. He questioned his own stories. Was their joy woven into the triumphs of the corporate world, or had he merely scrapped them for profit margins and accolades? "Do you ever think about what more you could achieve?" Mark asked, hoping to peel back some of her layers. She regarded him thoughtfully, her brow furrowing slightly. "Achieve? I achieve happiness in the little things: my family, my work." "You have to measure achievement by more than just power and money." Her words ignited a spark in him. What had he truly lost in his pursuit of success? The transformation he sought required more than just understanding from those around him. It called for introspection and a visceral reevaluation of his own values. As he listened to her each word, an unsettling realization began to form: a deep-seated yearning for a life rich in genuine fulfillment, not just financial gain. As the evening unfolded, pieces of Maria's life intertwined with his own burgeoning awareness. With every shared story, he understood the cost of his silence, the moments he had sacrificed for the sake of unyielding ambition. Maria navigated her life's responsibilities with grace and resilience that rendered Mark's struggles relatable yet embarrassingly insignificant. When the day began to fade and evening approached, they lingered, words muted under the weight of reflection. Mark found himself on the precipice of something significant, his resolve sharpening. He envisioned the days ahead, where a radical shift awaited him. Just as he formed a plan to not only begin this transformation, but also to seek reparation from those he had distanced himself from, a thought struck him unexpectedly. Would his new pursuit put him at odds with his current life? The question hung heavily between them. Silence stretched, brimming with a tension he couldn't ignore. Mark's heart raced, as he realized the precarious balance he would have to maintain, transforming while possibly losing everything he had built. To fully embrace this new journey, would he risk alienation from old allies, or even face confrontation from those unwilling to change? He took a deep breath, anticipation coiling within him. "Maria," he began, his voice steady, "I think I'm ready to confront who I really am. But I also need your guidance. Would you be willing to help me navigate this as I try to mend ties with my past?" As he spoke, he saw her hesitation flicker like a candle flame. She wasn't just a guide. She could become his ally in this tumultuous journey. "I can help you, Mark," she replied slowly, weighing her next words carefully. "But remember, facing the truth about yourself and those around you can be incredibly challenging. Are you truly prepared for what is to come?" Mark met her gaze, feeling the potential for change pulse between them, resonating with the uncharted possibilities of self-discovery. The journey had begun, but little did he know the storms that lay ahead. Would he dismantle the life he built only to find himself diminished, or would he emerge renewed, stronger against the tide of intimidating truths? He didn't yet know, but the uncertainty only stoked the fire within. The moment of truth loomed ahead, and his heart raced as he embraced the inevitable confrontation, the common thread of his existence woven into the tapestry slowly unfolding before him. Mark drifted through the sterile halls of his high-rise office the following morning. The polished floors reflected stark fluorescent lights, their harsh glow accentuating the doubts creeping into his mind. Each step echoed, serving as a constant reminder of the path he had chosen and the comfort he had sacrificed. He had always found solace in this environment, yet now the walls felt constricting, whispering of hollow achievements and unfulfilled desires. He shuffled into his corner office, commanding a sweeping view of the city, a vista that only yesterday had inspired admiration. Today, it felt suffocating, a shrine to the facade he had built. The corporate accolades hung on the wall like trophies of a life less lived, each one a reminder of ambition eclipsed by emptiness. Sitting at his desk, Mark rifled through his emails, the rhythmic tapping of keys contrasting sharply with the fervent storm brewing within him. Maria's words echoed. You have to measure achievement by more than just power and money. He read through the messages mechanically, yet his mind was elsewhere inspecting the whispers of purpose, of connection, waiting to surface amidst the internal chaos. His gaze landed on an email from his assistant, confirming a pivotal meeting with an important client. It was crucial, potentially lucrative, yet a sense of apathy washed over him. Would this meeting bring fulfillment, or was it merely another step toward financial accumulation? The faces of the men he would sit with, colleagues and rivals alike, flashed through his mind. Their hollow expressions and forced smiles twisted inside him. Was he becoming one of them? Mark pressed his palms against the desk, seeking clarity. He remembered Maria's family, their laughter, their genuine connection, the sheer joy that radiated within their modest apartment. It wasn't about the size of the paycheck or the title one held. It was about the bonds created, the laughter shared. A longing brewed within him, demanding he reevaluate his priorities. He felt a hunger to reconnect with his estranged family and friends, to rediscover the essence of real relationships. Gripping the edge of the desk, he steeled himself. The meeting could wait. He needed to take the first bold step toward authenticity. He reached for his phone and scrolled through contacts. The names of old friends surfaced, some he hadn't spoken to in years, each accompanied by memories washed away by time and ambition. A pang of regret flared within him. In a moment of impulsive resolve, he punched in a number he hadn't dialed in ages. The uncertainty of what might come next sent a shiver of adrenaline through him. He was ready to confront the ghosts of his past, but with each ringing tone, doubt began to creep in. What would he say? How would they react? Finally, a voice crackled through the line. Hello? Tom. Mark choked out, the name feeling heavy on his tongue. It's Mark. I'd like to talk. The silence that followed felt oppressive, a weight pressing down in the air. Mark? It's been a while. This was not the welcoming tone he had anticipated. Yes, I know. There's a lot I want to explain. Can we meet? Mark's heart pounded, each beat a testament to the vulnerability he was confronting. Sure, Tom replied carefully. But you'll have to be prepared for some tough conversations. I'm ready, Mark asserted, forcing conviction into his voice. After hanging up, a rush of exhilaration mixed with apprehension washed over him. He had taken a first step, but what awaited him in that conversation? Would Tom lash out? Would he reconcile with the pain Mark had caused? Mark understood that many bridges had been burned, and repairing them would not be easy, but he was committed to the journey ahead. Filled with deep ambivalence, he felt both anticipation and dread. This moment marked the beginning of a transformation that would demand honesty and courage, exposing the fissures in his carefully constructed identity. Mark leaned back in his chair, a whirlwind of emotions consuming him. Would this confrontation lead him into the light he sought, or would it plunge him deeper into shadows of regret? One thing was certain, there was no turning back now. He closed his eyes, visualizing the exchanges ahead, the potential reconciliations and confrontations, each scenario more daunting than the last. But with every mental play, hope flickered within. It was time to confront the truth, to face the storm brewing within and around him. Would he emerge renewed, or would he falter beneath the weight of their shared history? The next chapter was about to unfold, fraught with tension, and Mark realized it would require more than courage. It would demand finding strength he wasn't sure he possessed. Would he ultimately find redemption amongst the ruins he'd left behind, or further lose himself in the process? The day of his meeting with Tom arrived with a weight that felt heavier than the previous encounters in his life. As Mark dressed, he caught sight of himself in the mirror, and for the first time, He saw the remnants of someone he barely recognized, a man whose ambition had drawn lines across his brow and dulled the light in his eyes. Determination pulsed through him. He could no longer ignore the person he wished to be. Exiting his upscale condo, thoughts spiraled between anxiety and hope. On one hand, he craved connection with the past, but on the other, the uncertainty about Tom's response gnawed at him. The car ride to the coffee shop felt like an eternity, the city rushing past a blur of facades he had come to despise, each taunting him with whispers of his missed opportunities. Entering the coffee shop, the familiar aroma of roasted beans reminded him of quieter times, of easy laughter and shared moments. The hustle and bustle of the cafe enveloped him, but his nerves tightened as he spotted Tom at a dimly lit corner table, nursing a cup. Mark's heart rattled against his ribs, a drum echoing the primal emotions within. "Hey," Mark said, sliding into the seat across from Tom. Attempting a smile, he saw the other man's face soften slightly, but there was still an undercurrent of tension. "Hey, Mark." Tom's tone was flat, his eyes scrutinizing. "You wanted to talk?" "Yes," Mark breathed, each word a step into uncharted territory. "I know I messed up. I've been blinded by what I thought was success. I've neglected. I've been selfish." Tom's expression morphed into a mask of pain mixed with anger. "Selfish is putting it lightly, don't you think? You abandoned us when we needed you most." "I see that now," Mark stated, and within him, a flicker of loss ignited. "I let my ambition drown out everything else. I was chasing a shadow of success." His fingers fidgeted around the edge of the table, realizing the gravity of what he was about to delve into. "You can't just walk back in and expect everything to be fine," Tom snapped, the hurt spilling over. "You left without a word." "I know," Mark replied, his voice steady, but inside, his resolve wavered. "And I understand your anger. I don't expect forgiveness right away. I just need you to understand why I disconnected." Tom leaned back, crossing his arms, his gaze unwavering. "I want to understand, but it's hard. You had it all, the job, the money, and you still left us behind." For a moment, silence enveloped them, thick and uncomfortable. Mark swallowed the lump forming in his throat, gathering the confidence to share the deeper truth swirling within him. "What I thought was a fulfilled life became a prison. I sacrificed everything I cared about for titles and wealth, only to realize those things never filled the void. I want to reconnect with you, with our past, because it's a part of who I am." "That sounds good, but it feels like empty words," Tom countered, skepticism weaving through his response. "What happens when the distractions of your life pull you away again?" Mark sat up straighter, an unexpected clarity surging through him. "That's just it. I can't run away anymore. I've chosen a different path. I want to dedicate my time to the people who matter." Questions swirled within him. Who was he without the accolades? How could he rebuild a bridge that had been burned? Faced with the reality of his actions, he felt the walls built around him start to crumble, exposing the vulnerability that had been hidden for too long. Tom's expression softened as he nodded slowly, contemplating Mark's words. "You say that now, but can you really change?" "I have to try," Mark insisted, wrestling with the weight of a life unexamined as he prepared for the arduous task of building back trust. He realized this conversation could lead to a series of revelations about himself. He hadn't anticipated the flaws, the mistakes, but also the chance for growth. "I guess we'll see," Tom finally said, a hint of curiosity returning. "But know this, if we're going to do this, it's going to be on my terms." Mark nodded, understanding the gravity of rebuilding trust. As the conversation unfolded, he felt the flickers of rediscovery and hope intertwine. With every word exchanged, he felt layers of his old self peeling away, making space for something new, a reconciliation that could redefine who Mark truly was. But as the meeting continued, he could sense the looming specter of his past decisions hovering, waiting to revisit. Would he be able to shoulder the consequences of his choices, or would the weight become too much, dragging him back? As they prepared to part ways, Mark couldn't shake a growing urgency within him. He was ready to pull the pieces of his life together, but the question echoed in his mind: was he prepared for the intense challenges that lay ahead? The path was unfolding, and with it, the promise of the unknown called out a chance for rebirth, but fraught with confrontation. Would he emerge with a clearer identity, or become entangled once again in the distractions of his old life. The soft jingle of the coffee shop door faded as Mark stepped out, his heart still thumping with the remnants of his conversation with Tom. The world outside felt different, like walking through a dream where hints of possibility shimmered in the morning light. Yet, beneath that shimmer lay a lurking dread, the fear that his newfound clarity might slip through his fingers as easily as the fleeting steam from his now-cold coffee. He took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs, and set his sights on the bustling city that he had once so eagerly chased. Every corner of it had become a reminder of his past victories, a landscape littered with broken promises and unkept relationships. How could he reshape this familiar territory into one of redemption? With each step, determination surged within him. He was not ready to abandon his desire for growth or retreat to the apathy of his previous existence. He pulled out his phone, staring at the screen blankly. There were no texts waiting, no missed calls, just a void that felt fierce and profound. Was he truly alone now? The gravity of that question struck him, forcing him to grapple with the reality of his choices. Mark resolved to reach out. He began typing, his thumbs hesitant as they hovered over the keyboard. "Hey, is it still okay if we meet again? I have some things I want to discuss." He hit send, immediately feeling vulnerable, exposed. The implications of that message echoed louder than the noise of the street around him. Moments later, the phone buzzed in his pocket. A reply from Tom flashed on the screen. "Sure. Let us talk." As the days passed, Mark's mind consumed him with the tasks he set out to address, mending the broken relationships that had festered from years of neglect. He formulated a plan, intentional in reaching out to those he had wronged. Each person he contacted represented a piece of the life he hoped to piece back together, a path toward the fulfillment that had eluded him. The first key conversation was with Jenna, a former colleague, whose friendship had meant the world to him in the early days of his career. When she picked up the phone, he heard a hesitance in her voice, an understandable wariness. "Mark, I didn't expect to hear from you. What's going on?" she said, every word tinged with skepticism. "I've made some mistakes, Jenna. I want to make amends. I want to apologize for how I acted and to explain." He stumbled over his words, aware of the chasm his absence had created. "I'd love to take you out for coffee, if you're open to it." "All right," she finally replied, her tone softening. "Let us meet." As Mark put down the phone, a spark ignited within him. Each connection gave him a renewed sense of purpose, a reason to push through the fear of rejection. He spent days crafting his truth, preparing for the conversations that would spiral out of decades' worth of choices. This interior excavation felt like shaking off the dust of regret to reveal a foundation he could build upon. Yet uncertainty shadowed Mark's conviction. How would they respond? Would they see his efforts as genuine, or merely as attempts to smooth over past mistakes? The lingering doubts seeped into his thoughts like gremlins, questioning the authenticity of his transformation. He often caught himself standing before that mirror again, the one that reflected his ambitions, the battles fought, and the scars earned. Each subtle change in his demeanor, the flicker of hope, the glimmer of determination, was an acknowledgement that he could be more than just a capitalistic ghost haunting the halls of his past life. With Jenna and Tom waiting on the horizon, he braced himself for uncomfortable truths and possible confrontation. Mark pondered whether the real test was yet to come. As he began to walk his new path, stepping into the unknown, he felt the weight of his history pressing close. The question burned brightly. Could he trust the change within himself enough to invite others back into his life? And would they accept that invitation? The uncertainty loomed, but so did the promise of redemption. And as he took each deliberate step forward, the realization struck him. The journey of personal growth was about navigating through shadows, not avoiding them. What awaited him in those conversations could redefine who he became. With a deep breath, Mark knew he was ready to confront the next challenges. It was time to face his past and clear the shadows of doubt that loomed ahead. Little did he know, the revelations waiting on the other side would test him in ways he could never imagine. Would he emerge wiser or unravel under the weight of confronting the very fabric of his identity? As the sun dipped low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the city, Mark stood poised before the entrance to the cafe, his heart racing with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The day had come for his coffee with Jenna, a pivotal moment in his journey of reconciliation. Layers of doubt clung to him, remnants of the man he had been, yet he felt a burgeoning strength pushing him forward. He stepped inside, the warmth enveloping him like a comforting embrace. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, a stark contrast to the bitter taste of regret that often lingered in his mouth. Finding a table in the corner, he settled down and glanced at his phone. Reciting his rehearsed thoughts in his head offered little solace. The stark reality was that there was no script for how this moment would unfold. Jenna arrived shortly after, and as she approached, Mark couldn't help but notice the tentative way she smiled, as if testing the waters of their old friendship. "Hey, you," she said softly, taking a seat across from him. "Hey, thanks for meeting me," he replied, searching her eyes for signs of how she would react to this unexpected reunion. "What is on your mind?" Her question was direct, cutting through the tension like a knife. It was a probing that made clear this wasn't going to be a casual chat. This was a moment filled with weighty expectations. Mark's throat tightened. "There's a lot I need to say, and honestly, I'm terrified of how you'll respond." He paused, feeling the gravity of his admission. "I've been reflecting on my actions, and I see now how I pushed you away. I don't want to skirt around what happened. I need to own my mistakes." Jenna leaned back slightly, her expression cautious. "You've had time to think," she said, almost as a statement rather than a question. "What do you hope to achieve by doing this?" "Redemption," he admitted. Each word dislodged years of unspoken regrets. "I thought chasing success meant neglecting everyone else. I was wrong, and I realize now that the loneliness was my doing. I lost more than friendship. I lost a piece of myself in that process." Her gaze softened slightly as she processed his honesty. "It's a big step to recognize that, but it doesn't change what happened." "I know it doesn't," Mark countered, feeling a flicker of frustration. "But I hope we could at least start anew. I miss our conversations, your insight. I miss having you in my life." Jenna didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a sip of her coffee, her fingers lingering on the cup as if it offered comfort. Mark could see the wheels turning in her mind, the echo of old familiar camaraderie contrasting against the sharpness of her skepticism. "Mark, I appreciate your honesty. It's refreshing. But the past isn't just erased because we want it to be," she replied carefully. "You have to understand, trust takes time to rebuild. I need to believe that this isn't just an impulse for you." Every word felt like a challenge, a mirror reflecting his own internal struggles. He understood the weight of her scrutiny. "I'm willing to put in the work," he asserted, each word firming the foundations he hoped to rebuild. "I just want a chance to prove to you, and to myself, that I can do better." Mark could see that he had stirred something in her, a flicker of hope wrestling with caution. The weight of the moment felt both liberating and suffocating. His heart raced with possibilities, yet the shadow of his past still loomed. Suddenly, Jenna shifted in her seat and studied him closely. "What if I told you that moving forward isn't just about fixing what has been broken? What if it means embracing what you've yet to confront?" Her question sent ripples through his thoughts, stirring fears he had yet to face. "What do you mean?" Mark leaned forward, the urgency building between them. "Sometimes, the hardest truths are the ones we hide from ourselves," she replied, her voice steady yet filled with the weight of wisdom. "Are you truly ready for that?" As the implications of her words sank in, Mark felt the ground beneath him tremble. Could he face the abyss of his true self and all the consequences that might follow? The fire of determination ignited within him, but tinged closely with trepidation. He was ready to confront the shadows of his past, but at what cost? As Jenna's question hung heavily between them, Mark realized that this conversation was just the beginning. The true test awaited him, but the dawning revelation was clear. The journey of personal growth would lead him into uncharted territories, where deeper truths about himself and perhaps hidden fears were lurking just below the surface. Would he have the courage to face them? And as the light dimmed outside, the storm within him began to gather. Mark sat in that cafe, the steady hum of conversations swirling around him, but his focus remained anchored on Jenna, whose words reverberated with a resonance he couldn't ignore. As he considered the weight of what lay ahead, the prospect of unearthing buried truths sent a tremor through him. "Embracing what I've yet to confront," he murmured, allowing the phrase to settle. Mark realized he couldn't ignore this challenge. Perhaps Jenna was prompting him to dig deeper into the layers that had formed over years of neglect and ambition. Her serene yet probing gaze urged him to explore the uneasy feelings he'd so carefully shielded himself from. "What if you let me know what those truths are?" Jenna suggested gently, the warmth of her voice creating a stark contrast against the turmoil spinning in Mark's mind. Secret fears and desires flickered behind his emotional barricade, and he hesitated. Naked honesty, it seemed, required a vulnerability that terrified him. "I'll try," he finally responded, his throat tightening again. "I've always believed that vulnerability was a weakness, but I get it now. It's a strength." With that admission, he felt pieces of his facade crack under the pressure of realization. He had been fortified by the illusion of control, but that had only led to isolation. "What are you afraid of losing?" Jenna leaned in, her eyes searching his face for a deeper truth. "Everything," Mark replied before he could stop himself. "I'm afraid I'll unravel everything I've built my career, my life. What if confronting my past leads to nothing but chaos?" "Maybe chaos is exactly what you need to face," she countered bravely, her perspective sharpening the focus on his fears. "Sometimes the things we hold most tightly can end up suffocating us. You've been running for so long, Mark. What if the light you've been searching for is just on the other side of this?" The metaphor struck him like a thunderclap. The career he had been chasing so relentlessly was built on foundations of instability and sacrifice. His ambition had commandeered his relationships, and Jenna reminded him that true fulfillment required the integration of love and connection alongside achievement. Mark shifted in his chair, grappling with her words. "You're right. It's time to stop running," he said hesitantly, feeling a surge of resolve build within him. "But this isn't just about me. I have to find a way to make amends, to re-enter the lives I've neglected. I can't do it alone." Jenna nodded, her expression softening into understanding. "Then ask for help. Reach out to those you've hurt. It's a process, a very messy one, but a necessary one." The idea settled heavily on him. The messiness of seeking forgiveness loomed larger than he'd anticipated. It might mean facing ridicule or indifference from those he had wronged. The vulnerability required wasn't just to open up to Jenna, but to step into the currents of past relationships, to potentially confront the anger, sadness, or disappointment he had caused. "Will you help me navigate through this?" he asked, suddenly feeling more exposed than ever. The fragility in his voice momentarily disrupted the calm between them. "Only if you promise to take the lead," Jenna replied, her smile encouraging yet firm. "This is your journey, Mark. I'm here to support you, but you have to step out first." The pact forged a new path, one that now seemed daunting, yet liberating. Mark felt a shift. He would no longer allow the specter of his past to dictate his future. He recognized that this was the beginning of a profound transformation, laden with uncertainty, but brimming with potential. As they discussed practical ways he could mend bridges, excitement intertwined with fear. Mark envisioned the conversations he would need to initiate, the apologies he'd have to deliver, and the very real possibility that some would reject him outright. His resolve fortified. Mark's heart raced at the thought that every step into this unknown territory could lead to growth, healing, or even the redemption he craved. And amidst this swirling realization, the question echoed back in his mind. Was he truly ready for the upheaval of confronting his inner demons? He took a deep breath, feeling both vulnerable and empowered. As the evening shadows spilled over the cafe, transforming the comforting atmosphere into one tinged with mystery, Mark understood that he had crossed a threshold. But with each new decision, he knew the stakes were rising. The real challenge awaited him beyond the cafe doors. Would navigating the tumult of his past ultimately prove to be a gateway to the life he truly desired? Or would he find himself sinking deeper into uncertainty? The next morning, Mark awoke with a peculiar mix of trepidation and determination. The sunlight poured into his room, illuminating the shadows of guilt and regret that had lingered too long. He had committed himself to mending those broken connections, and it felt like staring into the face of an abyss. Would he find redemption waiting on the other side, or would the darkness swallow him whole? He sat up and mentally prepared a list of names. Friends, colleagues, individuals from stages in his life that, in one way or another, had become estranged from him. His chest tightened as he wrote, the thought of confrontation clawing at his resolve. Each name bore a weight of memories, both joyous and painful. Faces blurred in his mind, mixing gratitude and resentment, laughter and arguments. After jotting down the names, Mark paced his apartment, every footfall echoing the desire to avoid this task. He had been skilled in avoidance, crafting a life that deflected intimacy and vulnerability. Yet, for all the accomplishments that filled his resume, the empty spaces in his life loomed larger than ever. He called every nerve in his body into play, initiating a conversation with the first person on his list, Emily, a former best friend whose laughter once filled his life with vibrant colors. After a few rings, her voice came through, cautious yet restrained. "Mark?" "Emily," he started, the weight of 10 years unspoken pressing into each syllable. "I know it's been a while, but can we talk?" A pause lingered on the line, pregnant with silence. "Sure, what's on your mind?" Her tone was neutral, but imbued with the tension of years gone by. "I owe you an apology," he confessed, the words tasting foreign on his tongue. "I was selfish, pushing you away when you needed me. I thought I had it all figured out, but I didn't. Not even close." There was a crackle of disbelief before her reply came. "You want to apologize after all this time?" "Yes. I understand if you're angry or confused. I regret how I left things. I thought being successful would solve my problems, but it only made me lose sight of what truly matters." "You did matter, Emily." Her breath drew in sharply, and suddenly he realized that vulnerability wasn't just about laying bare his faults. It was also a way of acknowledging her hurt. "Mark, I never thought I meant anything to you." The tremor in her voice reflected years of unanswered questions. "You did," he reiterated earnestly. "I'm ready to do better, if you let me. I can't undo the past, but I want the chance to rebuild." There was a long silence. Each moment felt stretched and taut with possibility. Whether they would find the thread of connection again or sever it further was anyone's guess. Just as doubt began nipping at his hope, she finally spoke, a wary softness coloring her voice. "Okay, let us talk. I need some time to process, but I'm willing to meet. There is so much to discuss." The exchange left him breathless, a jolt of adrenaline racing through him. It was only one small step, yet it marked a pivotal moment in a much larger journey. As he hung up, a cacophony of emotions surged within him, relief intertwining with apprehension. Determined to face the next encounter, he moved down his list, each name promising a unique challenge. Reaching out to an old colleague, Marcus offered different stakes. Their fallout had been laden with professional envy, a rivalry that had gone too far. Mark pondered what truth to share, realizing this conversation would require a meticulous balance of honesty without igniting old flames of resentment. He found himself reflecting on how this newfound drive to reconnect was unraveling his identity. No more was he the solitary player in a self-imposed game of achievements. He was now a participant seeking genuine connections, a shift fraught with risk and vulnerability. Mark stepped away from the workplace facade he had so carefully curated. As he stood on the precipice of his past, he was beginning to realize that in this world of ambition, there was an invisible landscape that demanded acknowledgement. But as he scribbled down his next contact, a disquieting thought surfaced. Each truth unearthed carried potential consequences. Would the emotional toll of reliving his mistakes fuel growth, or would it unravel the very fabric of his newly forged intentions? With uncertainty looming, he took a deep breath, face set towards the next phone call. There lay the unresolved conflict of his rivalry with Marcus, and Mark braced himself to backtrack into the battlefield he had once fled. Would this confrontation lead to reconciliation, or would it deepen the rift that had defined their relationship? The line between redemption and destruction was razor thin, and Mark had no choice but to press forward, one vulnerable step at a time. As the sun rose higher, bathing his apartment in warmth, Mark knew the day had come. He had taken the first step in mending the bridges he had burned, and while the urgency of his commitment to personal growth surged within him, he also acknowledged the fear that clung as tightly as the morning fog. Revisiting the past would require more than mere apologies. It called for an honest confrontation with deeply buried truths. He finished the last of his coffee and sat before his list. Each name had a history, and each conversation promised to stir up emotions he'd long buried beneath layers of ambition and material success. Today, it was Marcus he needed to face, a reminder of the man he once was and a rival who had challenged him at every corner. Dialing the familiar number, tension coiled within him. The phone rang twice before Marcus answered with a clipped, "Hello? Hey, Marcus. It's Mark," he said, forcing steadiness into his voice. "What do you want?" His former colleague's tone reflected all the animosity they had battled during their years together in the corporate environment. "I'd like to talk, if you have the time," Mark suggested, hoping for an opening to reaffirm a connection long lost to competition and misunderstandings. Silence ensued, hanging heavily like a sword dangling above an execution. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Fine. Let us meet." The coffee shop where they agreed to gather was one Mark and Marcus had frequented during their more amicable days, a reminder of when their professional rivalry was fueled by mutual respect and ambition. Entering and spotting Marcus at a corner table, the chill of uncertainty enveloped him as he walked over. Marcus acknowledged stiffly, lifting his coffee cup in a mock toast. "Thanks for agreeing to meet." Mark began. "Let us not sugarcoat this, Mark. What is going on? Last I heard, you were too busy drowning in your own achievements to have time for old friends," Marcus countered, barbed words striking the air between them. A wave of defensiveness surged through Mark, but he forced himself to breathe. "I know, and I don't blame you for being angry. We let ambition turn us against each other, and it's something I came to regret." Marcus raised an incredulous eyebrow. "Regret? Interesting term." "I regret how I allowed our competition to cloud my judgment," Mark pressed on. "I chose to chase accolades without realizing that the relationships I ignored mattered just as much." "Relationships? Those were just metrics for success to you," Marcus replied, his expression fierce, yet beneath the surface, an inkling of surprise began to unravel the tension in his posture. "Yes," Mark admitted, his voice steadying. "I was blinded by my ambition, but that realization came too late. I want to make amends, not just for us, but also for my own self-redemption. I've lost too much in this pursuit of wealth." For a moment, the simmering tension dissipated, replaced by an uncertainty as Marcus narrowed his gaze. "And how do you plan to atone for stepping on my back to get ahead? I know I can't undo the past, and I don't expect forgiveness. But I truly want to build a better foundation moving forward, one based on integrity and collaboration instead of rivalry," Mark stated, his heart racing. "I want to ask you to be part of that journey, to reconnect, share insights, and maybe even work together." Silence hung heavily, a mixture of surprise and skepticism playing across Marcus's face. Finally, he exhaled slowly. "You think it's that easy? Rebuilding trust like flipping a switch?" "No," Mark replied firmly. "I'm aware it's a process, and I'm committed to it. I understand if you need time. I just needed you to know that I want to change." Slowly, a flicker of understanding began to breach the hardness in Marcus's gaze. "You really mean that, don't you? You're willing to do the work?" Mark nodded. "Yes. I'll be responsible. This isn't just about mending our friendship, but making a positive change in my life." As he spoke, Mark felt as if chains were being lifted. The vulnerability pulsating through him laid bare the desires that his previous ambitions had suppressed. He longed for a more profound sense of connection, a life richer than the singular pursuit of professional accolades. "I'll think about it," Marcus finally replied, his tone less caustic. "Just know this, it will take time. You can't rush reconciliation." "I understand," Mark agreed, a wave of relief flooding through him. "I'm willing to be patient." As they parted ways, the shadows of his past hesitations began to dissolve into a sense of hopeful anticipation. Each confrontation with a piece of his history unveiled layers of authenticity, prompting transformative growth. Rebuilding relationships wasn't merely about apologies. It also involved embarking on a path that required honesty with himself and others. The days that followed were filled with further efforts to reach out, each connection affirming his desire for genuine growth. Conversations with Jenna, Marcus, and others revealed the depths of his commitment to changing not just his past behaviors, but also his mindset. The process wasn't swift or straightforward, and the uncertainties lingered, yet an undercurrent of determination propelled him forward. As he reflected, Mark felt a newfound strength emerging within him. He He was no longer the man confined to a sterile office or shackled by his own ambition. Instead, he became a man ready to embrace vulnerability and connect with others meaningfully. Standing by his window, Mark admired the city he had once seen only as a battleground. Now, it revealed itself as a landscape of possibilities and connections waiting to be nurtured. This was the moment he had yearned for, where personal achievement transcended numerical values and sought something far more extraordinary. Achieving a recognized transformation wasn't merely about individual accomplishments anymore. It demanded engaging authentically with life and those around him. With each moment of vulnerability, he proved to himself and others that change was not only attainable, it was essential. As dusk settled, painting the skyline in shades of pink and gold, Mark understood he was no longer seeking redemption for his past, but rather fulfilling a promise to himself for a more authentic future. The journey ahead would require courage, resolve, and companionship. And as he prepared to navigate its uncertainties, Mark knew he was truly ready to embrace the life he had long pursued in a way he had never before imagined. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support, and you need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.